Having the wrong supplier means having the wrong product. By doing this, you jeopardize your entire brand's reputation and potentially losing millions of dollars doing it. This is something you can't return back from. You'll never get that credibility back again. My name's Chris, and I've been in the cannabis industry for over 20 years. I've had one of the first state licenses in California since 2018. I started and scaled a licensed cultivation facility from $0 to $3 million. I've launched 2 licensed cannabis brands that have been found in over 100 stores throughout California, and now we're expanding nationwide. And I'm growing a community of 1,000 cannabis entrepreneurs to teach them how to build $1 million a year business so we can take $1 billion of market share away from the corporate brands. Now let's jump into the mistakes that will ruin your business when it comes to sourcing. So one of the biggest mistakes I see is shopping on price instead of quality if you're a high-end brand. So a lot of people will get stuck with a price point in their head that they don't want to go past. And when they come across some really good product, but it's slightly above their price point, they'll turn it down because they're mentally set on hitting that price point. And in my opinion, if you're doing a high-end brand, this is a huge mistake. By being cheap and cutting corners on price, it means now you're competing in that mediocre pool. And maybe you'll find some good stuff at those price points, but you're gonna waste time and effort searching for it. And it's not gonna be consistent either. Because maybe you'll come across some good deals, but you might have only come across those because that cultivator or that manufacturer or distributor just needs to dump that off their balance sheet and just get it moved. And you're not gonna come across that same deal again. You can't come back to that next week or next month. So you're back to the drawing board. It becomes unsustainable. So when you're shopping just based on price and you're trying to get the best quality you can for the cheapest price possible, I'm not saying to be frivolous on your pricing, but I'm also trying to tell you is don't cut corners. When you found the right product and it's slightly above your budget, a lot of times you can figure out how to make that work. And you're better off losing a little bit of margin on your purchase price and figuring out either how to make it up on the retail price, or you just take that little hit internally. And it's better for your brand value over time. That money will come back to you exponentially. Conversely, if you're a budget brand, you don't necessarily have to abide by that principle though. If you're a budget brand, your consumers aren't expecting the highest quality. And this is where you should be shopping on price. Shopping on price is different on selling on price. So it's one thing to shop for a certain price, but it's a whole nother thing to compete on retail price. And what this is, if you're competing against these other brands on retail price only, it's not only a race to the bottom, but it means unless you're well equipped with a huge war chest of money, there's gonna be bigger budget companies out there that are gonna be able to outspend you and outcompete against you. And when they outcompete on a budget brand, what that means is they're gonna be selling lower and lower and lower, which means that's gonna keep lowering your margins until it gets to a point where you can't go any lower. But this company with the big war chest of money can potentially absorb those losses, even if they're not even profitable. It's a strategy to gain market share. And so what they're doing is building their brand value with market share by outcompeting you on price. So when you're a value brand, that's why I don't really focus on value brands, because to be the best value brand out there, technically you gotta be the cheapest for the best quality. And it's hard to do unless you're fully vertically integrated and you can really absorb those margins. Another mistake is not getting net terms from your suppliers. Now you're probably not gonna get net terms right off the bat from a brand new supplier. You're gonna have to build up that credibility and come to them with cash at first and start making your initial purchases. But once they see that your brand has some momentum, you're good to work with, you have integrity to how you do business, they're gonna be more open to extending net terms to you on your wholesale sourcing. And what this means is if you're working with a cultivation facility or a distributor that sees the motion you got with your brand and sees the movement, and some of these suppliers will understand And it goes with any business, not just cannabis, but a successful brand that's scaling can't necessarily cash out at every single junction along the way. And what happens is these suppliers will start working with you. They become kind of partners in a sense, where they'll give you net terms. They'll say, here's your raw materials, pay us in 30 days. And so what that allows you to do is not have to spend all that money up front. And now you have a budget to actually put towards marketing, packaging, fulfillment, all these things. And then when that money comes back from your sales, you can pay off your invoices. And the best way to do this is a pipeline strategy, to where you cash out for the first few batches, build that credibility, and now you kind of have that bankroll baked into your pipeline. And so what that's gonna do is now, by the third or fourth pickup, when your suppliers are willing to start extending these small amounts of terms, you're having money coming back from those first sales you already had. So now you can pay off those terms, keep your credit good with them, and keep that pipeline flowing. And so that's why it's a double-edged sword, where you're gonna have to have that upfront capital to get your pipeline started and build that credibility with your suppliers. But once you can get some net terms, you can really start cranking this pipeline up and turbocharging it. So if anything I've been saying so far in this video is resonating with you, join our community, where we have a group of entrepreneurs in cannabis that I've been showing my strategies to, and they've been successfully scaling up their brands and turning them into profitable entities. And not only have I done this with my brands, but I've shown other people how to do this and continue to do so. And this is our strategy to get 1,000 entrepreneurs, built $1 million business, so we can take $1 billion of market share away from these corporate, soulless, culture vulture brands. Fuck them. Another supply chain mistake people make is bouncing between multiple suppliers instead of identifying and consistently building a relationship with a handful of suppliers. And it's not saying you have to work with just 1 or 2 suppliers only, but really nurture those relationships with the suppliers instead of trying to go to someone new every single time. And instead, encourage your existing suppliers. Say if you need some new strains or some variety, encourage them to actually scale out that variety for you, rather than you having to go start from square one in all these different supply chain connections. So you also want to have some redundancy. You don't want to just rely fully on one supplier, but trying to go bounce around to 10 different suppliers all the time is going to be not advantageous to you either. So nurture the supply chain partnerships you have. Learn how to get the most out of those supply chain partnerships. Encourage, even if it's a cultivation supply chain partnership, bring in genetics, get them, start seeking out, doing your own pheno hunts even. Having a pheno hunter, you can do pheno hunts in tents, in garages, in small grows. You don't need big facilities for these. So focus on your genetics, if anything, and then provide those to a handful of your trusted suppliers that can then just become your genetic supply chain. And then give those genetics to a handful of your trusted suppliers that can grow and scale those genetics up on a commercial scale for you. The next mistake when sourcing product is not using a COGS calculator like the one I provide to all the Cannabis Academy members. And I'm not saying you have to use my calculator, but my calculator is made to be intuitive and easy to use. The alternative to this is using a traditional Excel spreadsheet and building out formulas. And if you're not familiar with using Excel, it could be slightly challenging because there's a lot of nuances and features, and understanding their programming language in order to make these calculations and formulas actually work. So that's why I prefer using my COGS calculator. It's very straightforward. You just talk to it naturally, tell it your details, and then it calculates all your COGS, your cost of goods sold. So it's showing you what your raw materials costs total are, your packaging costs, your production costs, your manufacturing costs, your distro costs, your salesperson costs. You can also work in marketing costs into there. And so what that's gonna show is you bought it for this. These are all your extra expenses. This is your sell price. This is your profit margin. And so by doing this, strategizing, it also allows you to understand when you can spend a little bit more on your wholesale materials. And like I was saying in the beginning of the video, setting yourself artificial price barriers that you turn down product because it's hitting this barrier isn't a smart move either, because you might be able to find some really good stuff if you just expanded your price $100, $200, $300 more. And instead of artificially restricting yourself, you can actually understand the numbers from start to finish and make better financial decisions and allow yourself to work with other raw materials that you may not have already planned to because of initial price barriers. So run the numbers, run them correctly, run them accurately. Because again, if you're not doing accurate number projections, that does you no good either. So be sure to join our community where we got other cannabis brand owners in there, and weekly we're getting on calls with each other, we're strategizing, we're solving problems, we're learning how to scale bigger for as low cost as possible with as much maximum return as possible. So join our community, click the link below, and let's finish out this video with a few more mistakes to avoid. The next mistake is becoming complacent with your consistent suppliers. So let's say you're a high-end flower brand that's been working with a cultivation facility for 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever, and you become complacent, realizing every batch they grow is always fire. I don't need to test this one. Just let me send the driver, pick it up, you know, buy 10 pounds of this strain, 10 pounds of this strain, 10 pounds of this strain. And then you get it down to your facility, you get it started packaging, you start testing it out and you're like, fuck, this shit ain't smoking right. So never buy for a high-end brand, even if it's from a consistent supplier that you've gotten 99 out of 100 times has always been good. You don't want that one time that you prepay for some flour or commit to it on terms and you get it and it's not smoking right. So do QC on every single batch, even if your suppliers have a great track record. Next mistake is competing on final retail price. This is a race to the bottom. And I mentioned this with the value brands, you're kind of subject to the race to the bottom already if you're gonna choose to compete in the value space. But especially if you're a high-end brand, do not participate in that race to the bottom. It's gonna screw you over and it's gonna screw your entire market share over. It does nobody any good to compete on price, especially on a high-end brand. These high-end brands are designed to speak directly to your demographic, and your demographic is the supporters of that brand. And if you start chipping down price on them, they're gonna start becoming accustomed to that. And that's why doing sales also is not a good strategy. If you always are doing a sale, say once a month or at certain stores, they put your stuff on sale, this can be highly detrimental to a high-end brand. Because now what happens is you might have a high-end brand's price point, but the consumers that are trained to just only buy it when it's on sale. And that's not a good strategy either. So instead of competing on price, compete on value and increase your value in order to make that high price appear to be more worth it. And it's not necessarily tricking people, it's just that you're piling on more stuff, you're giving them more value to enhance that high ticket cost. So instead of competing on lowering your price, compete by giving them more stuff for your price.